Several months ago, news started appearing online that Felipe Massa was trying to sue Formula 1 because of the whole Singapore Grand Prix thing. This being because Bernie Ecclestone, who was talking to a German publication at the time, said that he, Max Mosley, Charlie Whiting and the rest of the FIA knew that something was a bit iffy with the whole Crashgate thing, that what later became the whole Crashgate thing, and that Felipe Massa, not Lewis Hamilton, is the real champion of that year. I did a piece on all of this at the time, basically a why thing, but since then the story has not gone away. This is actually a thing that Massa and his legal team intend to see through. Now at the start it was all about the lost revenue that Massa would have been able to attain through being the world champion. Now though, they're intent on football coming home, well, Formula 1 coming home. And I will give Massa this, financial compensation seems like a fair argument. As world champion, especially in his native Brazil, where he would have been the first world champion since Senna in 1991, and winning the championship at the circuit in his home city, it would have been massive business, especially with Santander coming on board later on, with Fernando Alonso joining the team. He'll have no doubt seen the global megastar that Lewis Hamilton became, and feel that all of that was kicked off the back of the 2008 season that, in inverted commas, should have been his. And to add to that whole Santander thing, you've got Alonso, a Spanish driver and a Spanish speaker, as a two-time world champion. He would be the mouthpiece for the bank in basically every other country in South America, because nearly every other country in South America is Spanish speaking. Massa, as another world champion, would be highly, highly marketable in Brazil. And this benefits Santander, who was shifting operations towards South America to offset losses in the wake of the 2008 financial crash. It also makes you see why Ferrari never bothered to protest this in 2009 when all of it started to tumble out into the open, as Piquet started to go to the media and things like that to say, I was told to crash. Now, all of this must have caused a massive headache in Luca de Montezemolo's office. They've got Alonso coming in, who is part of this whole cheating scandal, so it, like I say, must have caused a few headaches. Now, though, Massa's lawyer, a guy called Bernardo Viana, I hope I've got that right, is looking to get everything out in the open and properly done so that Massa can have what is rightfully his. The objective is to bring the trophy home, Viana said to motorsport.com. It's not financial. To get there, several measures will be taken with different aims, some to obtain information and others to obtain statements. We want everything that happened in 2008 and 2009 to come to light. We are quite confident in the evidence we have, without prejudice to the additional ones we are looking for, and without prejudice to everything that will come to light. We understand that there is even more information that has not been made public. We understand that the proper remedy would be the cancellation of the race, as Bernie admitted, and that he, Mosley and Whiting always understood was the case. And like I mentioned in the previous video on all of this, there is a small problem. Charlie Whiting died in 2019, suffering a heart attack in Melbourne, Australia, literally days before the championship was to start. Max Mosley is also no longer around. He took his own life when he found out that the cancer that he had was only going to give him weeks to live. This then just leaves Bernie Ecclestone, a man who has since retracted that statement he made in that interview or podcast or whatever it was he was on, and is also a man that, well, most people don't listen to what he says anymore. Well, Massa did, obviously, but the vast majority of people are just going to be like, yeah, whatever, Bernie. Now, Massa's legal team is hoping that the eventual winner of that 2008 season, Lewis Hamilton, will come out and say something about it, because Lewis is a man of sporting integrity, their words not mine, and because he's an honorary Brazilian and loved by the Brazilian people. Except when it was the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix, where I believe it's the only time a McLaren driver with a bright yellow helmet was booed by the locals, and that Lewis would be more than willing to help out. Because Lewis is really going to go 15 years later, you know what, Felipe? You're right. You were robbed. Tell you what, here's the trophy. It's yours. We'll get on Wikipedia, we'll change the stats around. Go on, take it. I've got 6 more of these. I'm not going to miss this one. It's not going to happen, is it? Nobody in their right mind is going to do that. The same way that Red Bull and Max aren't going to go, yeah, that was a bit of a crap end to 2021, wasn't it? We're gentlemen. It's yours. That Massey's a right knob, isn't he? So I've been doing a little bit of an investigation of my own. I went on an internet to see if there have been any instances of cheating in Formula 1 and what the punishments were, because I want to see if there's been a precedent for this. Because there has to be one. Like, the thing's been going on for over 70 years, there has to be a precedent, right? And there are some. The first comes just a year before the Singapore race in 2008, where many feel Massa lost that title. You've probably already been saying it under your breath before the previous paragraph had even finished. probably around the point where I said precedent set with other cases or words to that effect. And that is, let's say it all together, Spygate, where disgruntled Ferrari employee Nigel Stepney stole confidential documents and handed them to Mike Coughlin at McLaren. And while McLaren was proved to have had the documents and had a jolly good look at them, the FIA couldn't prove that McLaren had nicked parts off the Ferrari to use on their own car. As McLaren were deemed to have cheated, they were expelled from the 2007 Constructors' Championship, but Alonso and Hamilton were allowed to keep the points they'd accumulated over the course of the season. Then there was also the fines. $100 million it was, the biggest in sporting history, I think still in sporting history. Any sport that covers Formula 1, football, boxing, darts, snooker, whatever sport you can think of. And Max Mosley was alleged to have said that it was $1 million for the offence and $99 million because Ron Dennis is a 10 years before that is the infamous Jerez 1997 incident between Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve. Despite warnings from Mosley that anybody who interferes with the championship result will be dealt with in the harshest possible manner, Schumacher, in the heat of the moment, attempted to turn in on Villeneuve and cripple both cars, as neither driver finishing would mean Schumacher, who was leading the championship at that point, would be champion, which is why the incident draws so many parallels with what happened in 1994. Because Schumacher was deemed to have tried to intentionally wipe out another driver from the race and the championship, he was kicked out of the entire season, much like McLaren was for the whole thing that happened 10 years later. Schumacher was spared a season ban for 1998 as, while it was a deliberate attack on another car, it wasn't proven to be premeditated, but he was still expelled from the 1997 standings, but allowed to keep all of his wins and poles, as reconfiguring the stats would have just been a mission. Again, like McLaren. This, in turn, on a separate subject, produces a whole hurricane of piss with regards to Suzuka 1990. Then there's Tyrrell in 1984, a whole lead shot controversy which I've covered in depth before, and the time when the Tyrrell cars of Martin Brundle and Stefan Beloff were the world's fastest shotguns. Once the FIA found out, Tyrrell was kicked out of the championship for cheating, although this one carries extra stuff with it, as Tyrrell at the time was the only non-turbo car on the grid, and it's thought that the disqualification was politically motivated to ensure an all-turbo grid, because then Ken Tyrrell, the team boss, couldn't effectively veto any vote that needed all the teams in agreement. The results, though, were amended as if Tyrrell was never there. The two podiums that Tyrrell scored that year, one being at Monaco with Stefan Beloff and the other being at Detroit with Brundle, I can't remember, someone will correct me in the comments if it is needed to be corrected, they were all chalked off. They had to hand over the trophies to other people. This one was quite an interesting story, has to be said. So then, it appears that when there has been an instance of cheating, it is the team or driver involved that gets kicked out. In these cases, McLaren, Schumacher and Tyrrell. So, if you were to follow the precedent set by these three case studies, the logical outcome and only outcome is that Renault is disqualified from the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. If they are further removed from the season, that would be at the FIA's discretion. But Alonso and Piquet would probably be allowed to keep their results for the rest of the season, if that makes any sense, like Schumacher and McLaren were. Well, not Tyrrell, as we've already established. So let's then assume Alonso is disqualified from that race. Everybody else is bumped up a position. Rosberg wins the race, Hamilton is second, Glock is third, and the rest of the points paying places are made up of Vettel, Heusinkveld, Coulthard, Nakajima and Button. Massa would have been 12th, no score, and Hamilton wins the championship by 3 points instead of the 1 that he actually won it by. But there was an interesting thing posted on the website formerly known as Twitter yesterday, something that actually got me thinking and actually became one of the few pieces of actual good stuff that's ever been posted on there outside of Matt Bishop's On This Day tweets. And it was basically the caption, "It was Singapore that lost me the title," and it was a tongue-in-cheek, a little bit of a mocking tone, a bit of a dig at Massa, but then it had 4 pictures underneath it which you look at and go, oh yeah, that happened, didn't it? The first is Massa smacking into Coulthard, after which Coulthard said, "I'm going to kick 3 colours of shit out the little b***." The second was Massa hitting Hamilton at Fuji and getting a penalty. The third was one of the many spins at Silverstone, and the fourth was the Hungarian Grand Prix engine failure, which, granted, was beyond his control. Actually, just as an interjection here, hey, it's Editing Aiden, how you doing? While Massa had been in a tangle with Coulthard, his engine blew 3 laps later, but at the start of the race, he had spun on his own into the outside wall at turn 2, which probably didn't help matters. The 2 collisions might have caused damage to the internals, I mean, who knows at this point, but still, 2 instances of driver error in the same race. You could argue that the engine blew because he was overdoing it trying to catch up. But what gets me here is that, okay, you work your entire life busting your balls to achieve a goal that only a select few in the last 73 years have managed to achieve. Stats time, in those 73 years, 34 drivers have won the Formula 1 World Championship, with Schumacher, Hamilton and Fangio accounting for a third of those won. You then lose that chance of glory on the final corner of the final race, and you point to a particular point in the season where you feel you were royally screwed. And then, someone in charge at the time says, oh yeah, we knew it was iffy from the start. So let's say then that it does get overturned. The results are chalked off, Massa is handed the title 15 years later. How do you celebrate that? Okay, I've never won a Formula 1 World Championship. The most I've got is a couple of football trophies from school, and even though I don't look like it, I used to be a fairly competent hurdler as a teenager. You win a tournament, you win a race, you become local or regional champion, and it's an in-the-moment thing. The release of it all. You've done it. The hard work paid off. Well, I say hard work, the only training I ever did was like an hour in PE, so it's amazing I won anything at all. You then get handed the trophy through a courtroom 15 years later. I don't know how you can be happy about that. Look at when these select drivers won the world title. These are just a few I've picked off the top of my head. Alonso, Rosberg, Vettel, Button, Limbs. They were going mental. It's all there in that moment. You are the king. Until the next guy comes along, obviously. So for Massa, that time has long gone. He's no longer racing in Formula 1. It would just be the most hollow of victories. Yay, I won! Right. Pub? Since 2008, 5 more people have won the World Championship. 3 of those multiple times. He's yesterday's news. He's not going to be reaping any rewards because the opportunity to take those has long since gone. It's going to be a paper championship. A Wikipedia stat, if you will. It's going to leave a sour taste in everybody's mouth and make Formula 1 look as silly now as it did in 2008 when the incident first happened. Only thing I'm hoping for out of all of this is that this is no win, no fee. Because this is going to be very, very expensive otherwise. So then, opinions on the continued Felipe Massa trying to get his title back thing that's been going on. If this has given you food for thought, do like the video, and for more stuff like this, along with everything else I do on this channel, get subscribed so you never miss out. Massive thanks to the patrons and the channel members who support the channel at a more personal level. The link to Patreon is in the description. The button to join the channel as a member is underneath the video, and there's also a button there for super thanks if you just want to do a one and done donation. And also in the description there's links to Discord and my socials if you just want to connect on that level as well. So until next time, I've been Millward. Have a cracking day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.